Haptics and Human Touch. Speakers Troy Otillo, CEO of Aira, Kevin H. Yu, CEO and co-founder Haptic, moderator Devin Coldaway, writer and photographer, TechCrunch.
All right, well, thank you. And thanks to SiteTech Global for facilitating this conversation. And Troy and Kevin, thank you for joining me here. Why don't we start out with a little bit of a introduction? I'm sure most of our viewers are probably familiar with what you guys do, but I don't know what maybe you've come up with recently or what you've been working on. Maybe you can give me just like a short summary of what your company does and what you've been working on recently. Troy, why don't you start us out?
Well, first off, thanks for having me at SiteTech Global. Really excited to be here and share a little bit, and also with Kevin, who's we've partnered with. So that's one of the things we'll talk about. But ultimately, if you haven't heard of Aira, we started as a startup, as a VC-backed startup 10 years ago. We raised 38 million, and the vision and the motto was access is a human right, and we focused on the blind, low vision community, building with them and really creating this concept of visual interpreting, remote assistance on demand. So we operate a 24/7 service where individuals who are blind and low vision can use our app, use our web app, use meta glasses, different ways to connect, but ultimately you're connecting with a human in the loop. We've augmented that with AI, so we also have AI. We're a free service in that individuals can use Aira at access partners. So part of our business strategy is to partner with government and business, such as Alabama, Colorado, many banks, a lot of tech companies use Aira as an accommodation. Many companies use Aira as accommodation. We're in 50 airports, 50 universities. So we're really proud of the progress we've made at providing a free service by partnering with businesses and to kind of provide the service. But with that service, because it's secure and trusted, we're HIPAA compliant. We really focus on information handling, privacy, security. We're trusted to do all manner of activities, including navigation, but including also work at a computer, in the home, reading financial documents, medical documents, COVID tests, pregnancy tests, all the things. With that, I feel like Aira has probably the largest catalog of use cases. We're approaching 10 million sessions, and with that, we've seen a thing or two, to borrow from another tagline. But really glad to be here, share a little bit more about what's going on at Aira, and happy also to be on the panel with Kevin.
Yeah, and Kevin, we just met the other day at TechCrunch Disrupt, where I wrote up your company for the Battlefield. I was super excited to have a company focused on accessibility presenting on stage. But why don't you share what you've been working on?
Yeah, I would love to. And thank you, Devin, for that amazing article. That was phenomenal. We've shared that with a lot of our investors and partners. Really appreciate the great write-up.
Happy to.
Troy, happy to be a part of this panel with you finally.
Yeah.
We're able to showcase to the world, a grander scale, our partnerships. So Haptic really started as a mission-focused, driven towards helping people with technology. And first we were, called WearWorks. We created a wearable device called Wayband. And that was what guided the first blind runner in the New York City Marathon, making history. So if you do a lot of research, that was the first time we had the New York City, a New York Times article, Discovery Channel documentaries, and TED Talk, really talking about the future of haptic technology, having a powerful common ground and stance within different partners, within map providers, all the way down to ride-sharing companies and so on. And what we're really trying to do is create a universal language of touch, one that can transmit a lot of complicated even information through the skin, so that you don't have to constantly rely on vision and audio, which a lot of the companies have focused on and have done a great job. So we focus on kind of the other chamber of the senses, which is mainly focused on touch. And the devices that we've created in the beginning are no longer really necessary. So we converted fully to a B2B SaaS model, rebranded into Haptic, encompassing entirety of information through touch. So now we have haptics of our technology, of SDKs being licensed out, that activates the vibration motors of smartphones and Apple Watches and Pixel phones and Pixel Watches as well, and Samsung. So we do that in partnership with them in order to keep on developing the future of haptic in terms of the hardware side, but also in terms of the software side. So we're kind of just breaking boundaries here, right? People thought it was impossible to run an entire marathon as a fully blind individual, and that it would be, really difficult to do so without a tether and a sighted assistance. And we were able to, break that mold and say, okay, it is possible. What's next? And now we work a lot with Paralympic athletes, blind and sighted, as well. And in tourism world, that's where we see a lot of interest. So I think this conversation is going to get really exciting because Aira focuses heavily onto the forefront of visual computation and information through agents. What we're able to do with haptic technology is to create that more immersive side for the user to feel calmer with navigation, let's say, and other types of info that we can allow the agent to not have to describe and overload the audio barrier, and then to go towards the more balanced way to communicate through technology.
Gotcha. Now, the use of haptics to communicate this kind of information. This is, of course, kind of with people with visual impairments as old as time. Using a cane or using any other kind of like touch-based navigation. People have been doing this for a long time, and technology has improved. I've seen various ways of doing this over the years. None has quite caught on. They've all been really interesting. Why do you think that now is the time and that haptic is the move?
Well, thanks to your article, Devin, the world now knows about the potentials of haptic navigation. I started the mission of really changing people's life with technology instead of just a small, 10% increase in satisfactory by creating prosthetics. And I learned a lot in the beginning by visiting blind organizations. So 10 years ago, again, like haptic was very much rudimentary. You had buzz for notification and smartphones, and that was practically it. And over time, things have evolved slightly, but still, when you look at a map app and Google Maps and Apple Maps and so on, these are still not accessible friendly in a lot of different ways. A fully blind and a deaf individual would not be able to use Google Maps, for example, in order to get to places safely, and also ride sharing, right, to find vehicles safely and so on. So we work a lot with the blind organizations, which is really the core of our customers and our royal communities. And then from there, we developed it in order to fit with the universal language side where everybody can use it the exact same way. So I think that's part of the difference within us, is that, we really started with a problem. We built it out, which made history and so on, increased it to a mass population pipeline where now anybody with a smartphone can use it right off from our app. Haptic Nav is a free app worldwide. We have now close to about 100,000 users organically. We want to keep the app free forever. At the same time, we want to now partner with companies like Aira, indoor navigation companies, and the big providers of ride sharing and so on, to say, okay, let's create this common ground where we can just license simply a technology that works, right? We have proven the concept. We've put it into the test. We've actually, made a lot of movements forward in that field. And I think that's what a lot of companies or maybe individuals in the past have not done, is to really put the technology out there, put it to the test, and to expand and grow. And the last thing I'll mention is, sense communication, if you want to evolve it, is very difficult. There are a tremendous amount of books and articles about sight and audio, right? Wine tasters all the way down to incredible musicians. But when it comes to tactile information, there's not a lot written about it. There's not a lot of information to learn from it. So we're creating that tool base, and to also provide the technology in a very easy way to integrate. And that's part of our major patent and IP.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to say that when I tested it out at back in the green room, I was really surprised at how like natural it felt to just automatically be like, oh yeah, now I get it. It literally only took like 10 seconds to figure it out. So Troy,
Devin, I'll add, by the
go
way,
ahead.
Again, we have the benefit of, tens of thousands of customers who are using all manner of tech, right? Like Aira is just another tool in the toolbox. We are often the system of last resort, right? When all else fails, but that gives us like a great access to both early adopters and folks who follow. And yes, as you said, there's been lots of focus on haptic-based interfaces. And ultimately, what we hear back often is that many of them are distracting. They take like some learning and break-in period, and at the end of the day, don't require so much kind of cognitive load that it doesn't really improve the situation, right? Or there's also a situation where the false positives or the false negatives aren't often easily discerned. And so, yes, you got the indication, but you actually, it's like the classic, my daughter, pick on her, she left and right are sometimes challenging for her. I say, hey, turn left when we're driving, and she'll turn right. It's just in her brain.
Other left. Yeah.
That's, so I think the haptic interface is really, powerful, but you have to get the experience right. And what our early results from not just Aira users, but even some of our staff for blind really found that the art and what they put together is, quick, very quick to learn. I don't even know if I call it learning. It's just obvious, and provides that kind of almost instinctual kind of interface. So I would say, my comment on this, having looked at a lot of haptic interfaces, either through the eyes of my customers or just directly, that they really have something unique here.
Yeah, I certainly thought so. And I think you mentioned that the experience, the intuitiveness of the experience is very important to people actually using it. You recently, or that is Ira recently published a paper that is about, since you mentioned that you've integrated AI and vision in lots of ways, and that's fantastic. We all know the capabilities of AI are, extremely interesting.
Yeah.
But it also can be a sort of, people can fall victim to that sort of like, it seems to work, but it doesn't really work. And in this case, you just put out a paper, I think yesterday or very recently,
Yep.
that was about the need to have a human in the loop with these AI systems. And it seems like you have both, so you really can say that with some conviction. Could you explain that that
Yeah,
concept?
I'll share a little bit. If you remember nothing more, a little plug, if you go to our website, you can download it's a white paper. And as we build things, I have a little side story that I would just like, I'm always looking for more collaboration in the industry itself. And we're all looking to adopt AI. So, every company of significance, Vespero, Be My Eyes, Aira, you name it, we've integrated, the vision-based APIs from all the major vendors, right? There's no real unique difference there. I mean, there's some art in how you do the tuning of it, and certainly we put a lot of effort in that so that our free AI, the ability to describe a image or a scene and interact with it, we keep working on that. But unique to Aira, we have our agents, and so we decided to put in a verification service. So the AI is free, right? So you can download the app for free. You can take images, take pictures, upload images, have it described, interact with it. That's great. You can also press a button, and for free, you can have a real human in the loop, a professional visual interpreter, review that. And you're not making a call. It's just that image is transferred to an available agent. They took a look at the image, they take a look at what the AI produced, and then they correct it if it needs correcting. They amend it if it needs amending, or just pass it back as, hey, it looks great. And in that, I'm not going to be able to quote all the stats there. There's a lot in the paper. Call it the failure rate, or the rate that the agent needs to correct or feels the need to correct is pretty high. It's above 30%. Now, the question is, are all those corrections material? I mean, lots of times if you're interacting with an image, you have a certain objective and you don't necessarily declare it, right? Like you might ask to have your coffee maker described, take a picture. What you really are interested in is the water level, or maybe what light is on, but you might not say that initially. And so if the AI comes back and says, there's 2 coffee mugs on the left, and it's really not 2 coffee mugs or 2 water glasses, is that material? Is that really an error? So there's some nuance in the error rates, and then the error rates also vary by use case, by lighting, by all kinds of things. So there's a lot more to learn. As part of our brand, we look to provide a service that is reliable and trusted. And so that's why we've added the human in the loop, so that you can get the trust, but you can also get the low cost, value from AI delivering visual information. And happy to talk about that more. I don't know that we were surprised per se, perhaps because we were looking at the data. But when we put it together in a report, we had a couple MIT interns working on it, so it's kind of a fun project for them. It was interesting to see the variation in the false positive, false negative rates in the different conditions, and that's also going to vary over time, right? As the AI improves, as different vendors come out, So it's a space worth watching, but I believe, at least from an Aira perspective, relative to the service that we provide, to, a professional service, human in the loop is absolutely required because, especially if you're blind and low vision, how else are you going to learn about the quality of the results, except for maybe if you depend on it and it sends you in the wrong direction or gives you the wrong info. So our job is to, provide a service, whether it's with humans or AI, we're going to combine it.
Yeah, I think that's what's interesting is that you mentioned, of course, the AI is going to get better, but the best way for AI to get better is the data that you are now producing. Like that is an extremely valuable set of data where it's like this is a picture or video taken by a person who needs this service.
Yep.
And here is exactly what they needed. Here's what it got wrong. Here's how we corrected it. It's such a valuable thing, and it can only happen with a service that is being used by people. So I think that will prove to be an extremely valuable data set. And so I want
to say, by the way, just for fun, everyone sees AI as new, and certainly the time is right. I think for AI, it's demonstrating great value. The name Aira stands for Artificial Intelligence Remote Assistance. So when we were founded 10 years ago and we raised, the money we raised, a significant portion of that was put into building our own AI. We failed. The time wasn't right. So we've always had an AI mindset. We've always had the belief that over time AI will augment and displace some of the things that humans do. It's really about how do you integrate the two in a way that's efficient and useful and natural, I guess, for both the individual seeking the information and the person providing it.
Totally. And speaking of integration, I understand you two have a partnership going on, some kind of little hookup. What's this partnership about? Who's doing what for who, and what does that look like for users of your apps?
Yeah, I'll share a little bit of the vision that Kevin and I came up with, and let him go further. He's obviously the expert on haptic, but today we navigate people all the time, right? Every day. Right now, there's probably a great number of folks roaming the planet right now, indoors, outdoors, and they're doing that with the agent giving verbal instructions. And we train our agents. There's a whole, it's almost like if anyone's ever, taken a flight lesson or know anything about piloting, there's a language you use with the tower. And we've definitely worked on that. Yet, it's not the only information that's being exchanged during a navigation. Often people want to know about the surrounding area. They want to know about what's present nearby. Like a quick little story is one of the things that caught my attention early at Aira is that someone had started using Aira. They worked as a dishwasher at a pizza place, and every 2 weeks they had to go deposit their check. And they had their route. They got on a bus. They went to their bank, deposited the check. And the first time they did this with Aira, they were leaving, the restaurant, and they're walking past a grocery store, and the agent said, and there's a Wells Fargo sign on this, there's a, just providing that information. And that person got so upset, like, oh my God, for the last 4 years, I've been, spending a half hour to go to a bank when in fact I could have been going next door. So there's a lot of extra information that people would want, yet it's crowded by the navigation instructions. So the vision is to have haptic integrated such the agent can either plot routes, let the person navigate on their own and maybe call back if they need additional information, or to simply make that navigation experience even richer because the individual is focused on the kind of the turn by turn through the haptic, while the agent is focused on the larger strategic objective of what the route is, and also providing the additional visual information that they get through the camera. And Kevin could talk about there's beyond haptics, Kevin, right? You have ability to do some of that turn by turn, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your side of the story here?
Yeah, I would love to just lean on that a lot. So as you were mentioning, Troy, the human component is something that's unreplaceable in a lot of ways, probably for a very, very long time, right? And in terms of the way that we were being observed by the blind and vision impaired community in the beginning, when we first proposed to NFB and the other organizations, proximity detection tools and navigation tools, orientation tools, all using haptic sensations, the question always comes out like, is this going to replace my cane and or my guide dog? And the answer is no, it's not. It's a part of the add-on that you have not been able to have for your sake of confidence and freedom to have the independence to move around to new places, right, without concern and without confusion for all of us. This is the part that we want to achieve. And same thing with our partnership with Aira. We're not trying to get rid of any specific element of the interaction. We're just trying to make it more immersive and better. So the topic that we're covering here is really, there's a lot of information and we're constantly bombarded with visual and audio, and it's only going to get worse, right? And there's going to be tons of noise in cities. It's going to get more booming and bustling at every given moment, with autonomous vehicles. Things are just changing at a rapid pace. So over time, the human mind is just going to become bizarre. Social media, etc. It's just going to keep on going up and up. So the tactile feedback for me is a really important element because it does pierce through a lot of that. It goes right through your core of like fundamentally understanding information in a way that's not necessarily have to be a distraction, right? It can be if it's just constantly a notification. But if you know exactly what that information is, you can either compartmentalize it, right? So you can say, this is not something I want to deal with. This is something I want to deal with now, etc. So I think of it as a first digestive system of the information that people are able to digest and then decide whether they want to, put their cognitive efforts into it. So, for example, you are a person walking around in the streets, let's say a fully blind individual, an agent from Aira is on, as he was describing. The navigation information is just like fully embedded into the core of your nature, right? So, for example, I used to ask the question, how do you feel when you walk somewhere that you've gone to a million times right now? You feel like it's very natural. You feel there's nothing in your really mind in order to distract you. It's kind of a calming, very relaxing journey. And that's the kind of type of experience we want to provide for somebody going somewhere for the first time ever. And that's what Haptic Nav does. It's not just a turn-by-turn direction. It's not just a left turn, right turn. It's an orientation. It's really the kind of, you can describe it as a hot and cold. You really have to feel it to understand, but it practically just intensifies when you go the wrong direction and then simply gets softer when you go the right direction and stops. And when I just talked to Anil from NFB yesterday, he was saying, we've been talking to a lot of the ride-sharing guys, especially Waymo, and these are discussions that come out. The custom honking noise and audio feedback are just not the right answer. Haptic Nav is going to be one of the major ones that's going to change the game in the industry of just identifying obstacles in a really precise and accurate way without that bothersome haptic feedback, right? So the fact that we refined this over the course of many, many years, it was really just nitpicking at the exact sensation that the range that a person will feel confident and comfortable to digest at a given moment every single time, to feel like they are going somewhere as if they've done it a million times. And that really is the core of Haptic Nav. And if we can allocate that to the end user and at the same time provide only the beautiful things of the information around them through like a human to human interaction, I believe that will be the best experience a person can have.
Totally. And that actually goes right into what I wanted to ask about next, which is getting the feedback from the community. I know you both probably are connecting with people who use the app all the time, but it's always interesting to me to sort of hear about how that feedback is actually like formalized and listened to in a systematic way. Because, when you have thousands of users and every once in a while someone says, hey, it'd be nice if this thing did this, that's not really systematic feedback, and it's not solicited in a way that you can necessarily be constructive with your own product about it. So I'm curious about how you, both as leaders of your companies and in the community, engage with the people that use your apps, and how do you come up with, how do you receive that feedback and act on it? Whichever one of you guys wants to jump on that.
You know what? Sure. I would like to kick it off just briefly because I have a lot to share about this in terms of how we've gathered the data within tech companies, within AARP, for example, which has been a recent investor of ours, with all different age groups, from children all the way to people over 65 and up, and so on. And then the blind and vision impaired community through NFB lighthouses. So the full conglomerate of the data part that we're able to receive is very diverse. And for example, when we do AARP surveys, they've done about 8 within indoor navigation, airports, tough congestion, high congestion zones, event spaces, and general navigation, and finding people within these places. And what we've learned is that about 87%, and these are people that never used haptic navigation before, right? Of all ages, again, sighted or unsighted, have identified that 87% suggest or prefer vibrational feedback for navigation over any other senses. That's including audio and sight. And that was really great for us. And that's 87% at the highest realm, like 5 out of 5. And then the other percentages go down to the 4, and then practically none at the visual and sight base. So if we can have the access to, of course, navigate through touch, that's going to be a very viable product for everybody in the world, which is what we have learned. And specifically with Google, we've done ERG testings with a lot of people there. And that's, of course, more internal, right? Techies, more like, people that understand the navigation experience in a very, very high way. They also understand that navigation through Google Maps right now are still lacking in a lot of ways, with especially accessibility side. So we're able to get that feedback and a global feedback from our app itself. So that's kind of like where I'll start off by saying our information is quite diverse, and the information that we are getting from the data that's pretty concrete are very solid now. And that's what we need to showcase to, let's say, the bigger corporations to say, okay, like, let's do something big. Let's make it a global movement here, a common ground where everybody can feel their way and not have to worry about that so much.
Speaking of feedback, that's boy, we could go a long way here. I'm a veteran of I guess Silicon Valley. I grew up an engineer, product manager at a lot of companies building software. In fact, Aira's my first company where focused on accessible technology, and I love it. But I borrow, and a lot of the folks at Aira borrow from companies like Intuit or Google or Apple on how we engage the users. And it's a multifaceted approach, right? There's high touch, low touch, there's follow you home. There's a lot of different techniques. And we use them all. We have an in-app feedback process that we continually tune, because we want to get the broadest feedback on our, not just the quality of the app, but the quality of the interaction with the agent. And the challenge is always getting the full spectrum, right? It's easy to get feedback from people who are either highly passionate about your product, they love it, or extremely dissatisfied. But how do you get that majority of folks who just either don't have time or they don't have the interest in providing the feedback? And that's a bit of the art. And I will say this about the blind and low vision community: they're incredibly patient, and they're incredibly grateful for advances in technology. And so sometimes the challenge is getting them to be critical of a product. And so we have techniques. It's it's in the art of design and research, like how do you ask questions that aren't leading, and how do you solicit feedback in a way that you get to the real why, right? The 7 questions. So I could go on about the way that we deploy, but you'd find that we use a lot of approaches that larger companies would take to collect feedback, both in person, observational, through surveys, through the app. I'll say another thing, we get a lot of great feedback when we just go to conferences. So whether that's NFB or ACB or other conferences like M-Enabling, often, there's a concentration of our users or people who don't even use our product. And that's often an awesome place to collect feedback, because the mindset at those events is different than the day-to-day, and people have more time. So there's just a multitude of ways, but I will say I'm very proud of what we've built with the community. And for anyone out there who's new to the community, I mean, if there's one piece of advice I give to companies who are starting out, I mean, you just got to wade in and ask a million questions, and find the people with the canes and the dogs, and just walk up to them and get make relationships and learn about their needs, because they're all different, and learn about their mindsets. Even the ability to adopt tech varies, just like in any population. But I think there's some unique challenges here, because part of the ability to wield tech is your comfort with technology, and for example, screen readers or voiceover in the first place. So I think there's an added degree of difficulty, maybe, in comparison to creating apps or services for sighted people. So as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this one. can talk on about it, but it's a key to any company that's entering this market.
No, totally.
I'd love to add in.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Sorry, Devin. Yeah, I think Troy, this stuff is, I'm really excited about this element here, and I speak for both of us. Like when we are gonna get the first data set ever of the computer vision alignment with haptic navigation together, this will be truly the first time ever people are getting like very high quality audio feedback and live, as well as utilizing computer vision and with the haptic experience conjoined, right? So that's the part that's, I believe, going to be a really amazing data set for both of us, and that will be setting an example for everybody else in the world.
I think that's like I mentioned before. I think that's one of the most exciting things is building out that data, building out those data sets that, it sounds kind of boring, like, oh, we're building a data set, but like it's so important to have this. Can you tell me a little bit how to, but as a startup, it must be very difficult to get started. You both started a few years back. How do we incentivize founders to focus on innovation and accessibility versus, just getting rich or going after the latest, trend?
I'll go, Kevin. It's a setup. I'll be kind of, it's going to sound a little pessimistic, but just bear with me. I think it's incredibly hard if you're talking about someone launching a company in the blind and low vision space for accessible tech. I think there's a lot of unforeseen challenges. Certainly, this is my fourth startup. Yeah. And there's just a lot more learning that has to go on. And the funding isn't the same as for, general tech. And so you have to be aware of that. And the adoption curve can be slower. It's harder to market and find people, like the self-identification of being blind and low vision isn't prolific, right? Certainly you can work with organizations like NFB and they have members. There's just a lot of hidden challenges. So I always tell people going into the market, go in eyes open, that you're gonna win because you have the passion in your heart and because you get engaged. I mean, that's the upside. It's gonna be struggling. Like, how do you incentivize? I mean, there are obviously financial incentives, but I think that the hidden incentive, and I see it from people I hire, from outside the industry, I see it from people who've been in the industry. You get a chance to, leverage your skills, whatever that might be, marketing, sales, development, even finance, in a way that I think has an impact on people that isn't the same in maybe other industries. And that's certainly what at the core powers like the staff at Aira, and that's also what powered us through a lot of the early challenges. The last thing I'll touch on, but it's a long conversation. I think coming from the VC world or knowing the VCs, which primarily fund early stage companies, I think there's still a big gap in awareness, a huge gap in awareness on what this market is about and also what accessibility means. I can tell you every startup I was at before Aira, not once did the board or the VCs or anyone ask us like, hey, how are you making your product accessible? It's just not part of that culture yet. And I think there's a big opportunity to influence that.
Yeah, and a lot to lean on. And from my side, I'm learning a lot, right, from the guys like Troy and people that have done it multiple times. This is part of, I think, the most important element that I see. Advisory boards. We have some of the top people on our side, the chief business officer of Waymo, for example, previously, and Francis West, who's 37 years at IBM, chief accessibility officer. RJ, who's a partner at Deloitte. So we're able to kind of get a big spread on the different compartments that we need for legal elements, ADA compliances, changing the game really in terms of how people visualize, but also feel the future. And from the startup standpoint, of course, it's just hard, right? The percentages are there. Everything's out in the open. It's a high failure rates, and if you don't have the passion and the mission, it's not going to happen. So I do have that time behind me as well. So I did start a previous company before this, focused on sustainability, and then I started this company, which is more tech focused, that can help people with our tools. In terms of our mission driven, and the people that have joined us have been just really solid individuals. Good hearts like Troy, and people that just do it for the right reasons. So I gotta say, having the right people on the board and advisors and mentors definitely are just the main key components of surviving as a startup. You may be a startup founder, but the people around you supporting you are going to be the giants. And I think by having that standing on the shoulders of them and being able to be really producing what actual forefront means, right, in technology, that's you can do that. And I noticed that when I first partnered with Mapbox, which is still a very fantastic partner of ours. And we're doing actually a Glomo award situation with them right now. We're doing a ton of different partnership and projects for map providers, right? So in terms of like that, I learned early on that the competitive edge between navigation tools, for example, we're not that great, right? Obviously, Google has all the photos and such that showcase the details of buildings, but when it comes to actual guidance system, A to B, it's practically the same thing, right? An arrow that points you towards the direction, a road route that's practically based on time efficiency, not even based on safety nor noise levels or anything like that, or preferences. It's just kind of like a very straightforward answer to how people feel like they should navigate. And there's a ton of issues, right? Coming out of the subway station, going the wrong direction, as we were mentioning before, that still exists in cities. I live in New York, and I still, observe that every single day. So when I realized that, going to the navigation tool, it wasn't obviously the easiest thing, but to get to the top levels of competition, we are using the same GPS data. We're still using the same exact sensors from the phones, orientation, gyroscope, accelerometers, they're all identical. And all we have to do is provide just a different way to communicate that information through the skin instead of any other method, and lay different, little pieces that would make it more accurate, sucking a bit more power, but it was able to serve the population that really wanted that higher accuracy, the higher orientation. Because for sighted users, they may just say, okay, I know the general direction, I'm going to just, go that way. But for somebody who's blind or visually impaired, may really rely on that at a second by second basis to know that they're going the straight pathway. That's one thing that Simon, the blind marathon runner, taught me early on, is don't dismiss the capability, the power of being able to keep somebody in a straight line, especially when they're running and or doing exercises. So that's why our technology really honed in on that component. But again, to wrap it up, like, startups are really hard. We talked to Enable Ventures, like they're a fantastic group, and we really, we're gonna have this big meeting at NFB. We're rounding up a lot of individuals that support in this field. And back in the day, the VC partners will ask me, how do you measure impact? And that's a tough question, right? People love it, people use it, and it changes their lives. Like, is there anything more I have to say or put into a documentation Excel sheet to show you otherwise? And I think, maybe Troy, you've experienced that similarly as well. Like, to showcase impact is truly within the end users, utilizing the technology, telling you in person, this is amazing, right? It changed my life. And I think that's the part that drives our mission.
Mm-hmm. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to ask just really quickly, like, is there one thing, if you're talking directly to some of your users, or maybe some people who haven't gotten a chance to use your apps and products yet, if there's one thing just coming up in the next couple of months that they could look forward to, what would you say that is? Just real quick, so we can end our little talk on time. Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the good CEO will never take the bait of one, so I'll give you three. One is, as you might have seen in the press, we're very proud to be in a U.S. pilot with Walmart. Walmart is obviously a premier brand, but it's also the most requested access partner by our constituents. I mean, it's a one-stop shop. It's got everything. So I would encourage anyone, maybe you're not an Aira user, maybe you are, but go visit Walmart. They're gauging the value of this solution based on like the use. So like, this is your chance to kind of vote with your time. It does include the website. Other things I would talk about, we didn't get into, but the whole revolution with Meta Glass, I think, is great to see that there's more smart glasses coming that are affordable, stylish, have the right performance. And I think that's exciting. And that will also make navigation and other tasks more natural, because you won't have to hold, your phone in the same way you do today. So those are at least the one thing I would talk about that's coming.
Nice work. And Kevin, you wanna finish us off here with the one thing that people can look forward to?
One thing is always tough. I think I'm gonna definitely go into two, if that's okay. But yeah, the first one is we've signed a lot of NDAs recently with pretty big companies. I'll just mention some like Volkswagen, and we're now talking with Samsung. In terms of the the updates that we're really excited about too is similar to what Troy said with Meta glasses. So we just had a meeting with Meta. Of course, with ride sharing companies, that's kind of like the core, I think, the approach for the next couple of months to really adapt haptic nav and help a lot of people shave seconds off every ride and make it fully accessible, friendly globally like this. But in terms of the Meta glasses, it is the right tool, right? In the beginning, Bose glasses didn't have the visual guidance or the computer vision side. Snap glasses had that but have the haptic feedback. Now Meta glasses have both. So now we're beginning to talk about, hey, how can we implement this very simply and easily so that you can have exactly what we're discussing, the visual computation provided to you and the haptic feedback directly to your head. Orientation is perfect for it. It just makes sense.
Gotcha.
Very excited about that.
No, I'm looking forward to all this stuff. This is fantastic. Well, it's been fantastic too, just speaking with both of you. Thanks for joining me to talk about this stuff. And thanks again to SiteTech Global for hosting this conversation.
Thank you, SiteTech Global. And thank you, Troy.
Everyone. Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Take it easy.